Hello everyone, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League and welcome to episode 1 of Rugby League Conversations. There's a few topics that I want to go over, maybe every week, every couple of weeks. A few things I want to talk about in depth and just kind of give my opinion on, and also hear your opinion on these topics as well, if you have any, and you want to share some. So, without further ado, let's get started on the first topic for this week. So the first thing I want to talk about this week is Sam Burgess. Now, a couple weeks ago at this point, I made a video about Sam Burgess being announced as the new Warrington Wolves head coach for 2024 and 2025. Since then, a few things have gone down at the Rabbitohs, namely Sam Burgess has been removed from the organisation. He is left. Now, there's a few things I wanted to say kind of as an update to my video from a few weeks ago, and a few things that I want to point out from things I've read regarding the news at the Rabbitohs. So, in terms of, as a response to my own video, my attitude on Sam Burgess being the Warrington Wolves' new head coach as a Wire fan has completely changed. And within the first week, it completely changed. Now, the initial response to hearing that Sam Burgess was the new coach was of basically negativity, because we'd had Tony Smith, brought us success. We had Steve Price, brought us success. And then we brought in Darryl Powell. I thought things were going to go well. I think things pointed or looked like they would have been possibly going in a good direction, but it didn't work out. And then the fact that we go from two top quality head coaches and a decent one on paper to somebody that's not had any real head coaching experience at a top level just instantly put on that negative switch in my head. Now, since then, I'd been looking into Sam Burgess on a more personal level, so podcasts were the go-to. And I listened to the High Performance podcast, as many other Warrington fans would have done, and people may have listened to in the past. And that was hugely eye-opening into him as a person. All I looked at when I made the initial video was just the face of it, of he's just a guy that's been like part of the coaching staff for the Rabbitohs. So my best indication of him as a coach is, well, how well are the Rabbitohs doing? That must be some kind of indication of, one, him as a coach, and two, who he's learning from, because he'll be learning from other coaches. And if that's the best they can do, if the Rabbitohs are a team that's basically going to struggle this season, it doesn't give me much hope for Sam Burgess. But when I listened to the podcast, and I also managed to get SAS Who Dares Wins Australia Season 2, which he was on. For anyone that hasn't watched it, I recommend you watch it. It's brilliant to watch. And it's so weird witnessing someone in that capacity, because Tony Smith was a big head coach. Like, that was a huge acquisition at the time, but that was just in the rugby league space. And then Steve Price was also another big name for us. Darryl Powell in England was a decent name, but to have a multinational superstar, let's say, not necessarily a TV star, but in this case a TV star, being so public with struggles in his life, hugely eye-opening. And the things that I've noticed with Sam Burgess, which I knew he was a leader as a player, but as a man, as an individual, I never saw him in this way. So my view completely changed. So I still have my doubts on the coaching side of things, because this will be a brand new experience for him, and this feels like it would be a big risk that Warrington Wolves are taking. But looking at Sam Burgess as an individual, from an outside view, he appears to have a lot of integrity. He's a natural born leader. He doesn't whinge about stuff unless it's holding people accountable. That kind of ties us into the conversation surrounding him leaving the Rabbitohs, in that were Latrell Mitchell and Cody Walker given too much leeway at the Rabbitohs? Now, if that is the case, and Sam Burgess is kind of stirring the pot a little bit, and causing problems where it doesn't need to be caused. Maybe things would have been fine if he'd never spoken up. But if it is the case where they're given preferential treatment and he's calling them out on it, for me, that's a big plus. That's a huge positive. Because we're bringing in a guy that, and he's talked about his experience for the England Rugby Union team as well, about wanting to hold players accountable, but he didn't really have enough experience and time invested into the sport to really call others out. So I really love the fact that we're probably going to get a coach that is willing to call out anybody if they are slacking in any area. Nobody's going to get any leeway. He's going to command instant respect from the players. And it's just so refreshing to see. It is a different sort of path that Warrington Wolves are going down. And I am worried on the coaching front. But the one thing that we talk about as Warrington fans, and most fan bases say this, to be honest, but we're fine with losing as long as there is clear effort. As long as people aren't being lazy, as long as people aren't cutting corners, as long as there is clear effort week in, week out, that's what we need as a bare minimum. And for me, I feel that Sam Burgess will get that week in, week out. He will galvanise that current squad. He'll bring in big players. There's already George Burgess. It was either George or Tom that was linked with Warrington Wolves. There was also a small thing about Olam as well. He would be a major signing. Highly doubt that's going to happen. But Harper from the Seagulls is currently the biggest link at the moment. So there's definitely going to be big names potentially coming in from the NRL. And that is going to be down to the fact that Sam Burgess is the coach. Players respect him as a player and as an individual. And another thing that gives me a lot of hope, especially on the coaching side of things, is the fact that Wayne Bennett wanted him at the Dolphins. And I don't think someone with the pedigree that Wayne Bennett has would ask somebody to be part of their coaching staff if he didn't believe that they could already offer some value from the get-go. Wayne Bennett was interviewed recently and said that when they offered him the position, he was thinking that Sam could help them and they could also help Sam to develop as a coach. Which would have been great to see. It would have been great because he also would have been learning behind... Is it Tristan Wolf? Is it Tristan Wolf? Wolf. I can't remember his first name, but he was the coach at St. Helens. He won the treble with Saints. So he'd be learning behind two really, really excellent coaches and bringing that experience to Warrington. Things might have worked out differently, and he might have wanted to stay longer. Who knows? But the fact that Wayne Bennett wanted him speaks volumes. The fact that players respect him so much. The fact that he's willing to call out inadequacies. And there was even a situation he talked about the Rabbitohs being in a hotel room, I think in the Gold Coast, I think it was. People wanted to go out drinking, go to clubs, and he said that no one's leaving. You can drink in the hotel, but no one's leaving. Nothing's going to derail the season. And that was in 2014 when they won the Premiership. So certainly, if there was any chance in hell that Sam Burgess saw my video, which I'm pretty sure he didn't, I'm going to flat out say that didn't happen. But if he did, I'm going to have to extend a sincere apology for being so rash with my opinion on that. I think at the time, that's how I felt. That's how my emotions were at the time. For me, it was a strange one. I really wanted Justin Holbrook, to be honest, or Sean Wayne. People that could make an instant impact and make us successful. But looking at things now, what we want as Warrington fans is somebody that's going to get the best out of the team, that's working hard week in, week out. And I think Sam Burgess will get that. I fully believe he will get a hard-working Warrington Wolves team next season and the year after. Hopefully that includes a grand final trophy as well, which would be great. And another thing as well, which also is interesting is that he's having some involvement in Warrington at the moment. He's asking to see training, asking to see the matches, wants player profiles, is suggesting things to interim coach Gary Chambers. So not only is Gary Chambers now running the team, with Marshall as the assistant coach, Martin Gleeson comes in as the attacking coach, but there'll be input from Sam Burgess. It's interesting to see these final few games of the regular season going into playoffs if Warrington make it. It'll be interesting to see what kind of dynamic, what kind of culture, atmosphere, style of play, attitude, every single aspect of a team looks like in these final few weeks and months compared to the first half of the season. It'll be very interesting to see, and I cannot wait for Sam Burgess to come next year. I cannot wait. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the Brisbane Broncos. Essentially, looking at them as a team now and potentially what they could look like in the future. First of all, I'm going to make a bold statement, a hot take if you will. I think the Broncos are in the best position to win the Premiership this year. More so than the Panthers. I think if both of those teams make the grand final, I think the Broncos win it. I think they are the best team. Now, if you look at how their team is built, it is stacked all over. And in terms of how they connect as a team, how they play individually, they are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And the thing is, the backup that they've got available, even if Reynolds comes out and Madden goes in, the rest of the team is still really strong. Even if Walsh goes out and you do have to put someone else in, it is a huge miss, but the rest of the team picks up the slack. There was something that I saw recently about, I think it was Andrew Johns talking about this. I could be completely wrong, but it was a conversation about Walsh or Mam. Can they keep both of them? Now, I like Ezra Mam. Don't get me wrong, I like him, but should he really be earning enough money to make keeping Walsh difficult? Is he really going to take up that much cap space? If we're looking at the likes of, say, Schuster, who is potentially going to be on a lot of money, I'm not sure if he is on 800k or is going to be on 800k, so I do apologise. But if we compare Mam to Schuster, he should be on 800k, if Schuster is. That's as a minimum. For me, there are, I'd say, 5 players that the Broncos have to keep. Non-negotiables that they need to keep for the next couple of years to give themselves a chance of winning every single year. Because it's difficult in a salary cap sport when your whole team is better overall. Individuals might not be that great, but they want a pay rise because they're part of a great team. And then in order to keep them, say if they're a young prospect, you have to get rid of some of your bigger guys to accommodate the salary cap space that's needed to keep these younger guys. So the 5 players for me that I feel the Broncos need to keep for the future, non-negotiables, includes Reece Walsh, Ezra Mam, Adam Reynolds, Payne Haas, and Patrick Carrigan. Those 5 for me are absolutely non-negotiables. Because as a spine of Walsh, Mam, and Reynolds, they will light the NRL up year after year. Now, I know Reynolds is getting on a little bit. He doesn't have a plethora of years available to him. But for the years that he's got remaining, I would personally say, in terms of controlling a game, he is the best in the league at it. Now, for longevity, you'd look at someone like Nathan Cleary, of course. But for a single season or a single game, the best controller of a game for me is Adam Reynolds. The Broncos are a completely different team and have been since he's come in. And for me, he has got to be part of, I say the future, the next couple of years, and that helps to build into the future. Whilst players like Ezra Mam build up his skill set for the next few years as well. But we've seen him improve. The way he was kind of thrown into things last year, he was a bright spark from the jump, from the get-go. He played extremely well as someone kind of thrown into a bad situation. And he just handled it brilliantly. Created a lot of opportunities, was always lively, and has impressed even more this year. Reece Walsh, for me, he needs to be locked down. Of those 5 players that I mentioned, Reece Walsh is number 1. He needs to be locked down for as long as possible. Now, Payne Haas, I'm pretty sure he's just announced, or the Broncos have announced a contract extension. That is huge. He is, without a doubt, the best prop in the NRL. That's not even a debate. You can throw some other names out there. I'm willing to hear some other names, and I will gladly say they're a top player. But there is no other prop in the league better than Payne Haas. It is simple as that. The pace, the power, the post-contact meters, the actual skill he's got as well is insane. Now, if you look at Patrick Carrigan, his tackling ability, his running ability, his skill, his leadership is too valuable to that team. You need a leader in the forward pack. Payne Haas leads by example, and so does Patrick Carrigan, but you need... It's difficult to describe, even though props, they do a lot of hard work through the middle. You almost need someone slightly different in the forward pack to lead in a different way. It's hard to describe. I can't quite put my finger on it, but Patrick Carrigan is a non-negotiable. He's got to stay. So those 5 players are huge. Now, the squad that the Broncos have overall is so impressive to me. Like, how they've got such a well-balanced team overall is insane. Selwyn Cobbo on the right with Katoni Staggs just inside. Both of those players know how to create chances for themselves from nothing. We see it all the time. Katoni Staggs just makes that step around the outside of a centre or a winger, fends them off, uses strength and pace, and he's through. Selwyn Cobbo, a quick step, a little bit of space into the corner, he gets it down. He finishes it beautifully. These are 2 quality players. On that left-hand side, Herbie Farnworth, really skillful, made a big step even from last season, played well last season, but made a big step, same with Ezra Mam. And Oates on that left-hand side is a class act, as we know, has been around a long time. But even if they play, I think it's Arthurs. I think it's Arthurs that would replace Oates typically on the left-hand side when he's been injured. He still does a fantastic job. And then you move into the forwards. You look at Capewell and Ricky. Strong defensively, skillful in attack. It's just pretty pacey as well, to be fair. Capewell's, a bit older than Ricky, but they've both got a bit of pace and skill to them. And then Thomas Flegler, he, is quite underrated. But of course, Flegler and Farnworth will be going to the Dolphins next year. And fair play to the Dolphins. They're, big players are going to make that team much better. But for me, the Broncos are a real special team. And as long as they can keep this roster, or as close to this roster, as similar as possible for the next few years, I think they could do what the Panthers have done and go back to back to back to back to back to back. They could do it. They've got the ingredients in that team to do it. They look impressive. I love watching them. But yeah, if they can lock down Walsh, Mam, Reynolds, Haas, and Carrigan for as long as possible, I see nothing but wins, and more wins for the Broncos in the future. So next I wanted to talk about Super League at the moment. I wanted to cover the plans that IMG have put forward. I want to talk about the current structure of the league and where we could potentially be going. Because a few weeks or months ago, IMG released a public PDF document that outlined the specific instructions that clubs need to follow or targets you need to hit in order to hit certain gradings. And it involved things like social media engagement, balance in the books, results in the league, the stadium, whether you have a TV or not, you get extra points for having a screen, or the facilities, average attendance. For me, great, maybe it incentivizes teams, but IMG, I think you've really not done any favours with this one at all. Not that IMG's watching this video. But my question to you, and if someone from IMG is watching this video and would like to reach out to me and answer this question, they won't because they're not watching. But my question that I put out there is, what is the point of grading? Because I would ask you also, what do you think these teams are doing now? What do you think they were doing before you were involved in the sport? Do you think they were just trying to fail? Just trying to get by? Some teams are just trying to get by because things are difficult for them. And telling them that they can hit a certain grading by having better results, better stadium, better social media engagement. Do you not think that they tried to improve these things already? And just because you come in and tell them to start doing this, suddenly they're going to do it? There's going to be a little bit of incentive, but do you really think that teams weren't trying to improve in all these areas in the first place? Now, there's been some conversation on the potential structure of the league that IMG has put forward. What I've noticed, not entirely sure if it's true because I haven't actually seen an official league structure announced, but the one thing that was rumoured for a while is like 2 leagues of 10, basically. Almost like 2 conferences like they've got in the NFL. I have an idea of how that could work. So you'd maybe play the 9 teams in your conference twice and then each team in the other conference once. Possibly. Something like that. But for me, I haven't seen anything on the structure. The current structure that we've got. Now, actually, before I get into that, I'll just talk about 2 things that have come up recently. Number 1, I believe that there is a new TV deal that has either been signed or is close to being signed between Super League and Sky Sports, which would mean that the annual amount that comes into Super League is around £1 million a year less than the current deal, but all games would be televised, and that's been reported by multiple people. So I'm going to take that on face value and say that under the current deal, it would have all games televised. Therefore, we could have the video ref at all games. For me, that is huge. That is the bare minimum that needed to be done. The grading stuff, waste of time. The bare minimum is getting every game on television. To get the product out there, to get as many people watching it as possible. So, if Super League has managed to do that, fair play. If you've got us a deal that means that every game in Super League will be televised, fair play. That is a huge win. That is massive for the sport. But what that needs to be accompanied by is an entertaining enough structure. The product needs to be interesting enough to keep people. Now, there will be random people that stumble across it because eventually, if all games are being shown, you're going to find more new people coming into the sport. And they might, they might see a game between Salford and Huddersfield. And they might instantly kind of fall in love with Salford. They might have some kind of attraction to them. Maybe they're from Manchester. Maybe they didn't even know that the Salford Red Devils existed. And they thought, well, I guess it's the local Super League team for me. They become a Salford fan. And then they pay attention to Salford. They keep track of them. Rather than being a kind of neutral that watches all games. And if they were a neutral, I think they'd get a little bit confused on how everything works. They'd wonder, why are we playing some teams 3 times? Why only some teams twice? How do we decide who gets to play who 3 times and 2 times? There's only 12 teams, so it's not that exciting. It's the same teams year in, year out. It's the same matches constantly. Just gets boring. So that is something that needs to change. If the TV deal means that every game will be televised, incredible. Because not only does that help getting the game out there, but with video refs, given how much slack refs are getting at the minute, as much video ref as possible is a huge win as well. So, good stuff there from Super League, getting that done. Or the RFL Commission, I think that's what it is. But IMG, I think, need to put out a clear structure. Whether they have control over that, whether that's what they're brought in to do, as well as all this grading stuff, I don't know. But I'm still personally concerned with the future of Super League. But they've done a good thing to start. Personally, this is what I would do. Now, I did make a video in December talking about my specific plans for Super League, and some of those things I'd still have today. A few things I'd tweak, and a few things I'd I'd leave out, sorry. But one thing that I wanted to do was simply increase the number of teams in Super League from 12 to 28. And I'd try and nitpick a few things from the NFL and try and go with that kind of vibe. And you'd play each team in the league once. That would create exclusivity with the matches. So that means, as a Wire fan, I would love to go to Odsal and watch Warrington away at Bradford. I'd love that. I think Odsal is the best stadium in the world. Personally, that's just me. Bradford fans don't think it, but I do. Odsal is the best stadium in the world. Simple as that. It's a beauty. But I'd love that. You know, you get one game against Wigan. Oh, great, it's at home. You get one game against Saints. Oh, we're away at Saints. You get one game against Halifax. Okay, we're away at Halifax. But that also helps Halifax because we have a big fan base that can travel there and potentially pump more money into the club. And it creates more variety with the teams playing in the league. There's more variety with the matches week in, week out. But there's that exclusivity. This is the only time we're going to play them. So it's creating that urgency to go to the match. This is the only time that Warrington's going to travel to Bradford. Only time we're going to play them. So we need to go. Now, they could still watch it on TV. That's fair. Sometimes people just can't do it. But it creates that exclusivity of this is the only time we're going to see it, except for maybe Challenge Cup or playoffs. So more incentive to go. That's just my thoughts there. There's a few other things. I could make an in-depth video if people wanted me to, but that's just my opinion on it. So, huge win for Super League if all games are televised, and we can have video ref helping out the referees a little bit more because they've been getting a lot of flack, making a lot of mistakes. But things need to change. I hope to God IMG know what they're doing because I believe it's a 12-year contract that they've got. I haven't got much faith in them at the moment because the grading is not for me. If Warrington finish last, we should go down. I don't care if we're a grade A team, we qualify for that. I don't care if we get maximum points in the grading system. We should go down if we're last. Simple as that. But I guess we'll see, hopefully in the coming weeks, or at least in the off-season, what they want to do for Super League in terms of structure. And I hope it's a good one. Otherwise, we're going to keep failing behind Rugby Union, which even gets flack from Rugby Union fans saying that the sport is dying. So we're still behind a dying sport. It's really depressing. But we will see what they produce in the future. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any opinions on topics that I've been talking about in this video, I want to know your opinions. I want to get into some dialogue. Now, if people are just straight up attacking, then I'm not going to waste my time conversing with you. But if you want to have some open discussions, we'll go over some agreements, some disagreements. We'll try and, talk about things openly in a civilized conversation. I'm more than happy to do that. If you've got criticism, I will take the criticism. And I'm happy to have an open conversation that is considerate and not just verbal abuse being spouted back. So, yeah, if you have any opinions, let me know. If there are any other topics that you'd like me to go into, there are a few others that I could maybe consider talking about next week. There's, a few Super League teams, a few NRL teams I want to talk about. But if there's anything you want, let's say, a fresh perspective of, do let me know. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.